Imagine moving back home to care for your recovering mother, only to discover your neighborhood's HOA is planting military-grade landmines in her garden to force her out. When the police showed me security footage of the HOA board sneaking around at 2 a.m., I realized this wasn't about community standards. It was a sinister plot tied to millions in dirty money. How far would you go to protect your family when the people threatening their lives are the ones sworn to protect your community? 3 months ago, I moved back to Meadow Springs to care for my mom after her heart surgery. She raised me in our house with its wraparound porch and the old oak tree where she hung my tire swing 30 years ago. Coming home should have been simple. It wasn't. The day after unpacking my boxes, a sharp knock at the door introduced me to Diane Winters, a woman with perfectly highlighted hair and a smile that never reached her eyes. "You must be Eleanor's son," she said, clipboard clutched to her chest. "I'm the president of the Meadow Springs Homeowners Association. We need to discuss some violations." Mom was napping, so I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What violations?" Diane's French manicured finger jabbed at a paper filled with check marks. "The rose garden extends 8.5 inches beyond your property line. The mailbox is painted unauthorized sunset orange instead of HOA-approved rustic terracotta, and the oak tree branches hang too low over the sidewalk." I rubbed my temples. "My mother just had triple bypass surgery. Can this wait a few weeks?" "Rules exist for a reason," she replied, clicking her pen repeatedly. "You have 7 days to correct these issues or face daily fines." As she marched away, our neighbor, Frank Wilson, waved from across the street. Later that evening, he brought over a casserole and some friendly advice. "Watch yourself with Diane," he warned, lowering his voice even though we were alone in Mom's kitchen. "She's made it her mission to control every inch of this neighborhood. Last year, the Patels had to sell their house after she bankrupted them with HOA fines." "Over what?" I asked, suddenly worried. "Their daughter's wheelchair ramp didn't match the approved aesthetic. They needed permission for medical accommodations. Apparently, that night, I researched HOA laws until my eyes burned. I discovered many of their so-called violations weren't even legal to enforce. The property line issue particularly bothered me. HOA Tragedies exposes the most insane power trips ever. What's the worst HOA violation you've faced? The next morning, I pulled the official survey from Mom's filing cabinet and was measuring the garden border when Diane's silver Mercedes pulled up. She stepped out alongside a tall man with thinning hair and expensive loafers. "This is Gregory Palmer, our HOA attorney," she announced. "We're documenting continued violations." I held up the property survey. "Actually, according to this official document, Mom's garden is completely within her property line." Palmer squinted at the paper. "That survey is outdated. The HOA commissioned a new one last year." "Without notifying the homeowner?" "That's illegal in this state," I replied, thanking the hours of research I'd done. "I'm a civil engineer, Mr. Palmer. I understand property boundaries." Something flickered across Diane's face. Surprise, maybe even respect, before hardening again. "Nevertheless, the other violations remain. The next day, I painted the mailbox rustic terracotta and trimmed the lowest branches of the oak tree. Not because they were actually violations, but because Mom didn't need the stress of fighting those battles. For a week, things stayed quiet. I helped Mom with her recovery exercises and planted vegetables in the backyard. Then, I found a notice taped to our door one morning. "Emergency HOA meeting. 7:30 p.m. All homeowners required to attend." At the meeting, held in the community center, Diane stood at the podium like a general addressing troops. 50 neighbors filled the chairs, many looking as uncomfortable as I felt. "Due to recent challenges to HOA authority," she began, eyes finding me in the crowd, "we're implementing stricter enforcement protocols. The board has approved hiring a compliance officer who will conduct daily neighborhood inspections." An older man in the back raised his hand. "How much will this cost us?" Dues will increase by $75 monthly, Diane replied smoothly. The room erupted in murmurs. I stood up. May I ask a question? Diane nodded stiffly. Who owns the company being hired for compliance enforcement? Her hesitation told me everything. Palmer Security Consultants is highly qualified, she said. Owned by Gregory Palmer, the HOA attorney. I finished her sentence. Isn't that a conflict of interest? The meeting dissolved into chaos. Some neighbors thanked me for speaking up. Others warned me to stop making waves. Frank Wilson introduced me to Sarah Jang, who had served on the HOA board until resigning 6 months earlier. They're after your mother's property, Sarah whispered, as people filed out. The corner lots are valuable for the commercial rezoning plan. What rezoning plan? I asked, but Sarah shook her head. Not here. Meet me tomorrow at the library. I drove home, worried but determined. Mom was asleep when I arrived. But something felt wrong. The front door was unlocked, though I distinctly remembered locking it. Nothing seemed missing. But my folder of HOA research had been moved. The next morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. Looking out the window, I saw workers digging up Mom's rose garden. Diane stood supervising, a triumphant smile on her face. I rushed outside in my pajamas. What are you doing? Stop this immediately! Implementing corrections per HOA bylaws, Diane replied, handing me a document. This grants us right of access to remedy violations after the grace period. I showed you the survey. This is illegal trespassing. Your mother signed this agreement when she purchased the house, Diane countered. Page 12, paragraph 7. The workers continued digging. Piling Mom's beloved roses on the lawn, furious, I called the police. Officer Martinez arrived 20 minutes later. After reviewing the documents, he shook his head apologetically. It's a civil matter, sir. The HOA agreement does appear to give them this authority. I watched helplessly as they finished destroying 30 years of Mom's gardening work. What they left behind looked strange. Perfectly spaced holes along the property line, each filled with something I couldn't identify, before they covered them with soil. Drainage improvement, Diane explained without being asked. A preventative measure. That night, Mom cried over her roses. I promised to replant them. Though we both knew it wouldn't be the same, the originals had been planted when I was born. I still met Sarah at the library the next day. She brought maps and documents showing plans to convert our neighborhood into a massive shopping complex. Diane's husband owns the development company, she explained. Your mother and 5 other homeowners refuse to sell, with enough violations and fines. They're hoping to force foreclosures. As we left the library, I noticed a black SUV following us. Sarah hurried away, looking terrified. I snapped a photo of the license plate before heading home. Mom was sitting on the porch when I arrived, staring at what remained of her garden. Something's not right with the soil, she said quietly. It looks different. I knelt down to examine the disturbed earth. That's when I noticed a thin wire barely visible above the dirt. Don't move, Mom, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. Stay exactly where you are. Her eyes widened as she saw my face. What's wrong? I pointed to the thin wire poking through the soil where her roses once grew. I don't know what this is, but it doesn't look like drainage equipment. Carefully, I took my phone out and called Officer Martinez, keeping my voice steady though my hands shook. I need you to come to 724 Maple Avenue immediately. There's something suspicious buried along our property line by the HOA workers yesterday. While waiting, I helped Mom inside, then took photos of the wire and the disturbed soil pattern. The perfectly spaced holes now seemed methodical, almost military in their precision. Officer Martinez arrived with another policeman, a taller officer with a weathered face named Sergeant Reynolds. Show us exactly what you found, Reynolds said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much to be easily surprised. I pointed to the wire. Reynolds knelt down, examining it without touching anything. His expression changed instantly. "Get back to the cruiser, Martinez. Call the bomb squad and evacuate the houses on either side now." My mouth went dry. Bomb squad? Reynolds stood, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "Sir, I spent 2 tours in Afghanistan. That's a trigger wire for an explosive device. Someone's planted something dangerous here." The next hour passed in a blur. Police cars blocked off our street. Men in heavy protective gear carefully dug where I pointed. Neighbors gathered behind yellow tape, whispering and pointing. Through my living room window, Mom and I watched in horrified silence. A technician in a bulky suit approached our house, removing his helmet as he climbed the porch steps. His face was sweaty, grim. "We've secured the area," he reported. "You have M14 anti-personnel mines planted along your property line. Military grade. Not something civilians should have access to. Each one contains enough explosives to kill anyone within a 15-foot radius." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "My God, who would do this?" I demanded, though I already suspected the answer. The bomb technician shook his head. "That's not my department. The detective will want to speak with you." As if summoned by his words, a plainclothes officer appeared at our door. Introducing herself as Detective Wynne, she was shorter than me, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Davis, Mrs. Davis, I'm handling this investigation. Can you think of anyone who would want to harm you?" Mom looked too shocked to speak, so I answered, "The HOA has been pressuring us. They dug up the garden yesterday. Right where you found those mines." Detective Wynne's expression remained neutral, but she wrote quickly in her notebook. "Any witnesses to the digging?" "Several neighbors must have seen it, and the HOA president, Diane Winters, supervised the whole thing. The workers, would you recognize them?" I nodded. They wore uniforms from Palmer Landscaping Services, related to Gregory Palmer, the HOA attorney. Detective Wynne's eyes lit up. "Interesting. Anyone else we should know about?" I hesitated, then told her about Sarah Jang, the rezoning plans, and the black SUV that followed us. "You've been busy," Wynne commented. "One more question. Do you have security cameras?" "No, but Frank Wilson across the street does. His system captures part of our front yard." Frank welcomed us into his cluttered home office, where monitors displayed feeds from several security cameras. "I installed these after my car was vandalized last year," he explained. "The system stores footage for 30 days. He typed commands, bringing up yesterday's recording. We watched workers in Palmer Landscaping uniforms digging up Mom's garden under Diane's supervision. "Can you go back further?" Detective Wynne asked. "Maybe a few nights ago." Frank scrolled back to 3 nights previous. At 2:17 a.m., the camera captured 4 shadowy figures in dark clothing approaching our property line. "Zoom in," Wynne requested. The image quality wasn't perfect, but clear enough to identify Diane Winters, Gregory Palmer, and 2 men I didn't recognize. They carried duffel bags and worked methodically, digging small holes and placing objects inside. "That's our smoking gun," Detective Wynne said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Mr. Wilson, I'll need a copy of this footage." Mom's face had gone pale. "They were trying to kill us over a garden dispute?" "Not just that," I reminded her. "Sarah showed me plans to turn our neighborhood into a shopping complex. Your lot is crucial because it's on the corner." Detective Wynne was already on her phone, requesting warrants. "We'll need to search the HOA office and Palmer's business. Mr. Davis, is there somewhere your mother can stay tonight? We'll have officers stationed here. But I'd feel better if you both were elsewhere until we secure all evidence." My sister Angela lived an hour away and agreed to take Mom while I stayed behind with the police. After Mom left, Detective Wynne showed me something the bomb squad had discovered. A map in one of the duffel bags the suspects had accidentally left behind, marking planned mine locations across several properties, all belonging to homeowners who had refused to sell. This goes beyond harassment or intimidation. Wynne said gravely. We're looking at conspiracy to commit murder, terrorism, illegal possession of military weapons. The list goes on. While we talked, her phone buzzed with a text. She read it, her expression darkening. They just arrested Diane Winters at her home. She's claiming the HOA board knew nothing about this. Says it was all Palmer's idea. Do you believe her? I asked. Not for a second. Wynne replied. People like Diane don't take orders. They give them. That night, as I tried to sleep in our empty house with a police cruiser parked outside, my phone lit up with a text from an unfamiliar number. Back off. Or, next time, we'll make sure your mother walks into something that can't be disarmed. I showed the message to the officers outside, who added it to their evidence. Sleep became impossible after that. I paced the house, jumping at every creak and shadow. At dawn, I stood at the window, watching officers catalog evidence along our property line. The horror of what might have happened kept hitting me in waves. Mom's daily routine included checking her mail first thing each morning. She would have walked right into those mines. Detective Wynne arrived with coffee and news. We've got all 4 suspects in custody, but they've lawyered up. The DA is pushing for no bail, given the severity of the charges. What about the text threat? I asked. We traced it to a burner phone purchased with cash. But here's where it gets interesting. The security camera at the store where it was bought captured Kyle Winters buying it, Diane's son. I remembered seeing a young man with her at HOA meetings, always on his phone, looking bored. Exactly. And when we searched Palmer's office, we found documents suggesting this isn't isolated to your neighborhood. They've done this in 2 other communities in the state. I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. All for money? Money, power, control. Wynne shrugged. You stood up to them, questioned their authority publicly. People like Diane Winters can't tolerate that. The doorbell rang. It was Frank Wilson with a casserole and news of his own. The neighborhood's in an uproar, he reported as Detective Wynne excused herself to take a call. Half the HOA board has resigned. There's talk of emergency elections. Let someone else deal with that, I said wearily. I'm just focused on keeping Mom safe. Frank nodded sympathetically. Sarah Jang called a meeting at her house tonight. A lot of us want to make things right. Show that we're not all like Diane. Detective Wynne returned, her expression serious. We just executed a search warrant at Winters Development Company. You need to see what we found. She placed her tablet on the table, displaying photographs of documents and emails. One showed a list of homeowners labeled Phase 1 targets, with my mother's name at the top. Another contained detailed instructions for acquiring and placing persuasion devices on selected properties. This wasn't just about your mother, Wynne explained. You were first because you challenged them publicly, but they had plans for every holdout property. And there's more. We found connections to similar accidents in other communities where residents mysteriously decided to sell after strange incidents on their properties. How deep does this go? I asked, feeling the floor shift beneath me. Wynne's answer chilled me to the bone. We're bringing in the FBI. This crosses state lines and involves military-grade weapons. Your HOA president isn't just a neighborhood tyrant. She's part of an organized criminal enterprise. As we spoke, another officer rushed in. Detective, we've got a situation. Kyle Winters just tried to access the evidence locker. When he was stopped, they found this in his possession. He held up an evidence bag containing what looked like a remote detonator. He was trying to trigger the remaining devices, Wynne realized. Already reaching for her radio. All units, sweep the Davis property again immediately. We may have missed something. I stood frozen, staring out at what used to be my mother's peaceful garden, now a crime scene wrapped in yellow tape. Somewhere beneath that innocent-looking soil might still be hidden something deadly, waiting for the press of a button. Officer Rodriguez showed up with more photos spread across my kitchen table, images of Mrs. Henderson and 3 men digging in our garden at night. In one photo, a man handed her what looked like a metal disc. My stomach twisted into knots. "Those are military-grade landmines," Rodriguez explained. "Only available through black market channels. This isn't random HOA bullying. They wanted someone hurt." I collapsed into a chair, legs suddenly weak. "But why? Over 6 inches of garden space?" Rodriguez tapped more photos, showing documents with the HOA letterhead. "Your mom's property sits at the corner of Pinecrest Drive and Maple Avenue, the only spot blocking a planned shopping mall entrance. Developers offered the HOA a $5 million kickback if they secured all corner properties." My hands trembled. Mom refused to sell last year. Some man in an expensive suit offered her triple market value. "Tom Henderson works for Apex Development," Rodriguez said. "The same company trying to build that mall." The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the peephole, I spotted Sarah Jang, the former HOA treasurer who'd always smiled at Mom at community picnics. "I shouldn't be here," Sarah whispered after I let her in, eyes darting around nervously. But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Not after hearing about the explosives. She pulled out a thumb drive from her purse. "I kept copies of everything before they forced me out. The HOA has been stealing money for years. Fake maintenance charges, inflated contractor bills. Mrs. Henderson bought a vacation home in Florida with that money." Sarah's voice cracked. "When I questioned a $50,000 payment from Apex Development, Tom Henderson cornered me in the parking lot. He said my kids might have an accident at the community pool if I didn't mind my business." Officer Rodriguez took notes, her expression grim. "We need your official statement." Sarah nodded, then froze as headlights swept across the window. "That's Kyle Henderson's truck. He follows me sometimes." Rodriguez moved to the window. "Stay away from the glass. I'm calling for backup." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off, or we finish what we started. Your mother won't survive the next accident." I showed Rodriguez, who photographed the message. "We can trace this. Meanwhile, you both need protection." That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard scratching at our back door. Peering through the blinds, I spotted movement in the shadows. The police officer stationed outside approached with his hand on his weapon. In the harsh beam of his flashlight stood Kyle Henderson and a man I recognized as the HOA landscaper, frozen in the act of placing something beside our air conditioning unit. "Police! Don't move!" The officer's voice cut through the night. Both men bolted, dropping a canvas bag. Inside were wire cutters and what looked like a timing device. By morning, our quiet neighborhood had transformed into a crime scene. News vans lined the street as bomb squad members swept our property again. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Mrs. Patel from across the street brought over tea. The Hendersons threatened to fine us for our Diwali decorations last year. When my husband complained, our cars were keyed the next day. Her eyes watered. We were too scared to say anything. Similar stories emerged throughout the day. The Gonzalez family had their heritage oak tree poisoned after disputing pool renovation costs. The elderly Johnsons were suddenly hit with thousands in special assessments after questioning HOA financial reports. While helping Mom take her medicine, I noticed her hands shaking worse than usual. "I should have sold when they asked," she whispered. "I never meant to put you in danger." I held her frail fingers. "This is our home. They don't get to bully us out of it." Later that afternoon, I met with Rodriguez at the police station. She showed me financial records they'd seized. The rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought. The HOA has shell companies, offshore accounts. This is organized crime-level stuff. "But they're just neighborhood busybodies," I said. Struggling to process this information, Rodriguez shook her head. "Mrs. Henderson's brother-in-law served time for racketeering. This HOA was perfect cover for money laundering and real estate fraud." As I left the station, my phone rang. "Sarah Jang, they broke into my house," she whispered, voice shaking. "My files are gone, and someone spray-painted "dead woman walking" on my bedroom wall. "I'm taking my kids to my sister's in Ohio." I clutched the steering wheel tighter. "Sarah, don't run. That's what they want." "The police can't be everywhere," she hissed. "You don't understand what these people are capable of." The line went dead. When I tried calling back, it went straight to voicemail. Driving home, I noticed a black SUV following me, staying 3 cars behind. Turning when I turned, panic rising, I pulled into a crowded gas station and called Rodriguez. "Stay where you are," she ordered. "Officers are on their way." The SUV drove past slowly. Through tinted windows, I glimpsed Mrs. Henderson in the passenger seat, staring directly at me. When I finally reached home, Mom was sitting with a stranger in our living room, a thin man with silver-rimmed glasses who introduced himself as Jackson Wells, a reporter for the local newspaper. "Your mother has quite a story about HOA corruption and threats," he said, smiling. "I'd love to get your perspective, too." Something felt off. The press badge hanging from his neck looked wrong. The colors too bright, the lamination uneven. "How did you get past the police officer outside?" I asked casually, positioning myself between him and Mom. His smile didn't waver. He stepped away for a moment. "Lucky timing!" I pretended to reach for water while pressing the panic button Rodriguez had given us. "Well, we have nothing to say without our lawyer present." "That's unfortunate," Wells said. Standing, "Mrs. Henderson speaks so highly of your mother, says she's been confused lately. Early dementia can be so tragic." Before I could respond, the front door burst open as Rodriguez and another officer rushed in. Wells bolted toward the back door but was tackled in the kitchen. As they handcuffed him, Rodriguez showed me his real ID. Edward Henderson, Mrs. Henderson's eldest son, who supposedly lived in Seattle. The HOA's web of lies was unraveling. But the danger was growing. Who else was involved? And what lengths would they go to silence us? Bold red letters flashed across my phone screen. "Emergency HOA meeting. Attendance mandatory. 7 p.m. tonight." My heart raced as I showed the message to Officer Rodriguez. "Perfect timing," she said, sliding a tiny microphone across the table. "Wear this. We'll have plainclothes officers inside. But we need solid evidence of threats." Mom grabbed my arm, eyes wide with fear. "Don't go. They planted bombs on our property. What else might they do?" I hugged her gently. "That's exactly why I have to go if we hide. They win." The community center buzzed with nervous energy as I slipped into a seat near the middle. Neighbors whispered in clusters. Many avoiding eye contact with me, I spotted Rodriguez, dressed in casual clothes near the back exit, and 2 other officers positioned strategically around the room. At exactly 7 p.m., Mrs. Henderson strode to the podium, her pearl necklace catching the harsh fluorescent light. Tom Henderson and 3 other board members sat behind her, faces grim. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Mrs." Henderson began, her voice honey-sweet. "As you know, our community has been subjected to troubling allegations in recent days. Rest assured, your HOA board has only ever acted in the best interests of Pinecrest Gardens." My blood boiled as she continued, describing the unfortunate misunderstanding about my mother's garden, portraying themselves as victims of malicious rumors. "Furthermore," she continued, shuffling papers importantly, "we've discovered that certain property lines were incorrectly mapped decades ago. Several corner lots, including the residence of Elaine Wilson, actually encroach on community land by significant margins." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Henderson smiled thinly. "The board has generously decided to offer these homeowners a special buyout program at fair market value. Rather than pursuing legal remedies for this encroachment," I couldn't stay silent another second. "Is that what this is about? Stealing my mother's property?" I stood up, hands shaking. "You planted landmines in our garden. Military explosives that could have killed children, pets, anyone walking by." The room exploded with shocked voices. Neighbors jumped to their feet, some backing away from me like I was crazy, others shouting questions at the board. Mrs. Henderson's face hardened, her mask of civility cracking. "That's absolutely preposterous. We would never." "We have it on video," I interrupted, voice carrying over the chaos. "The Taylor family's security cameras recorded everything. You and your board members digging in our garden at 2 a.m. The police have the footage, and the explosives." Tom Henderson lunged toward me suddenly, face purple with rage. "You should have just taken the hint and left when you had the chance." Officer Rodriguez moved with surprising speed, intercepting and restraining him as other officers converged on the podium. "This meeting is adjourned immediately," Mrs. Henderson shouted, trying to gather papers and retreat toward a side door. But Rodriguez stepped into her path. "Jennifer Henderson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and fraud." As officers led her away in handcuffs, she locked eyes with me. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You have no idea who you're really dealing with." The community center descended into pandemonium. Some neighbors rushed to comfort me, while others hurried home, faces pale with shock. Mrs. Patel hugged me tightly. "We should have spoken up sooner. I'm so sorry." Outside, news vans had already arrived, reporters thrusting microphones toward anyone exiting the building. I spotted Sarah Jang standing near a police car, giving a statement to a detective. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think arresting Henderson solves anything? The next attack won't have a warning. Sell the property by Friday, or attend 2 funerals, yours and your mother's." I showed the message to Rodriguez, who immediately called it in. "We're tracing this, meanwhile. We're moving you and your mother to a safe location tonight." Back home, Mom was packing a small overnight bag when someone pounded on our front door. The officer stationed outside drew his weapon as I checked the security camera. To my shock, it was Kyle Henderson, looking desperate and disheveled. "Please," he shouted at the door. "I need to talk to you. I had nothing to do with the landmines. My parents are crazy." Rodriguez arrived moments later, escorting Kyle to the station for questioning. "He claims he wants to cooperate," she explained. "Says he has evidence about his parents' connections to bigger players." That night, in a hotel room across town, Mom finally slept with the help of mild sedatives. I stared out the window at the city lights, wondering how our quiet suburban life had exploded into this nightmare. My laptop chimed with an email notification from an encrypted address. The subject line read, "Proof of Apex corruption. Open immediately." Inside was a video file. With trembling fingers, I clicked play. The footage showed a meeting in what looked like an expensive restaurant. Tom Henderson sat with 3 men in suits, one of whom I recognized as James Mercer, CEO of Apex Development. "The old lady won't sell," Tom was saying. "We've tried everything legal." Mercer leaned forward, his voice cold. "Then try something illegal. We need that corner lot, and the construction deadline is non-negotiable. Our investors aren't patient people." One of the other men spoke with a heavy accent. "My associates can make problems disappear permanently. But it costs extra, and there's no going back." Tom hesitated. But Mrs. Henderson, previously off camera, stepped into frame. "Do what needs to be done. Just make it look like an accident. We've worked too hard to let one stubborn old woman ruin everything." The video ended abruptly. I immediately forwarded it to Rodriguez. 5 minutes later, she called, "Where did you get this? The quality is too good for hidden camera work." "Anonymous email," I explained. "Could it be Kyle? Possibly, or someone inside Apex covering their tracks." Her voice lowered. "This goes higher than we thought. The accented man is Vincent Caruso, a suspected organized crime figure with connections to construction rackets across 3 states." My blood ran cold. "What do we do now?" "We're bringing in the FBI," Rodriguez said. "Local jurisdiction isn't enough anymore. Meanwhile, stay in the hotel. Don't contact anyone or post anything online. After hanging up, I peeked in on Mom, relieved to see her sleeping peacefully. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from Kyle Henderson's number. They know I talked. Dad's missing. Mom's lawyers are already spinning stories about her mental health. They're coming for the video. Trust no one. I stared at his words, wondering if it was a trap or a genuine warning. Outside, a car door slammed in the hotel parking lot, then another. I crept to the window and carefully peered through the blinds. 3 men in dark clothing were walking purposefully toward the hotel entrance, hands hidden inside their jackets. How had they found us so quickly? Who had leaked our location? I grabbed Mom's medications and my laptop, then gently shook her awake. We need to move now. What's happening? She mumbled, disoriented from the sedatives. I think we're in danger, I whispered, helping her into her robe. We need to use the back stairs. As we slipped into the hallway, the elevator at the far end dinged. I heard male voices, then footsteps moving quickly in our direction. The stairwell door seemed miles away. Would we reach it in time, or had Mrs. Henderson's mysterious connections finally caught up with us? A 3:30 a.m. phone call jolted me awake. Your house is on fire. I raced to Mom's room, heart pounding, and got her safely outside before realizing there was no fire. Just another scare tactic. I slumped on our front steps, watching police cars arrive for what felt like the 100th time this week. Officer Rodriguez looked tired. They're escalating, she said quietly. The Hendersons made bail yesterday. My stomach dropped. How? Those were serious charges. Someone paid cash. Rodriguez handed me a coffee. And this morning, the judge assigned to their case suddenly recused himself. Something's not right. Back inside, I spread the HOA financial records across our kitchen table. Mom had finally fallen back asleep, but I couldn't rest. Something about the payment patterns kept nagging at me. Wait a minute, I whispered, tracing my finger across transaction dates. Every major HOA decision against homeowners was followed by large deposits into a side account labeled Community Improvement Fund. But the money never improved anything in our neighborhood. Instead, it flowed to shell companies, all owned by Apex Development. I grabbed my laptop, searching property records. I was shocked to discover Apex had bought 16 homes in our neighborhood at bargain prices, all after owners faced bizarre HOA harassment. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Jang. Need to talk. Library, 1 p.m. Come alone. The public library felt safe with its crowds of people. Sarah sat in the corner, nervously watching the door. They threatened my kids, she whispered, sliding a USB drive across the table. But I kept copies of everything. Apex isn't just a development company. They're washing dirty money through real estate. Henderson is just their puppet. Before I could respond, Sarah's phone rang. The color drained from her face. My daughter's school just called. Someone tried to pick her up, claiming to be her uncle. She bolted for the door. I hurried to the district attorney's office with Sarah's evidence. D.A. Walsh seemed troubled by my findings but barely glanced at the files. These are serious claims about powerful people. We need more than just paper trails. 3 days later, the news hit. All major charges against the HOA board were dropped, leaving only minor fraud counts. Mom's blood pressure spiked from stress, landing her in the hospital. As I sat watching her sleep, feeling completely defeated, an orderly I didn't recognize slipped me a note. Roof parking. 10 minutes. Against my better judgment, I went. A woman in a nurse's uniform waited by her car. I'm Walsh's assistant, she said. She can't help you publicly. Apex has judges and police officers on payroll. They even have photos of Walsh's son at their lake house. So everyone's just going to let them get away with planting landmines? I fought back tears. Not everyone. She handed me a business card. FBI Agent Donovan. White-collar crime division. Call from a burner phone. Driving home that night. Headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. A black SUV following too close. When I pulled into our driveway, It stopped. The window rolled down. James Mercer, Apex's CEO, smiled at me. "Your mother seems unwell," he said casually, though his eyes remained cold. Hospitals can be dangerous places. So many things can go wrong with medications. My hand gripped the USB drive in my pocket. "We have very deep pockets and friends in surprising places," he continued. "But we're reasonable. Sign over your mother's property, and all this unpleasantness stops." "And if I don't?" Mercer shrugged. "Next time, we won't plant fake landmines. Think about it." As he drove away, my phone rang. Mom's doctor. Her test results showed unusual levels of a medication she wasn't prescribed. Someone had already tried to poison her. FBI agent Donovan didn't believe me until I played the recording of Mercer's threat. "You recorded him?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Smart move." "I record everything now," I replied, gesturing to the tiny camera pin on my jacket. After finding landmines in my yard, trust isn't my strong suit. We sat in a hotel room 20 miles from Pinecrest Gardens. Mom was safe in a different location with round-the-clock protection. Agent Donovan spread photos across the bed. Mrs. Henderson meeting with judges. Mercer handing envelopes to police officers. D.A. Walsh at Apex's headquarters. "We've been building this case for months," Donovan explained. "Your landmine incident finally gave us enough to move. These people have done this in 5 different neighborhoods, forcing out homeowners for development projects. What happens now? We need one more piece. Proof Mercer knew about the landmines beforehand. Without that, he claims Henderson acted alone." I remembered something. Mom's old gardening camera, she set it up to watch her flowers grow. It runs 24/7 with cloud backup. Donovan's eyes widened. "Where?" "Hidden in a birdhouse." The camera had captured everything, including Mercer himself supervising as the HOA board buried devices along our property line. He'd been there the whole time. "We move at dawn," Donovan said. I couldn't sleep that night, jumping at every sound. What if they had more people on payroll than we knew? What if someone warned them? At 5:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Turn on the news." Breaking news banners flashed across my screen as FBI agents raided homes throughout Pinecrest Gardens. Mrs. Henderson, screaming about her rights, was escorted to a waiting car in her bathrobe. Tom Henderson tried to run but was tackled on his front lawn. The biggest shock came at Apex headquarters, where agents discovered a room filled with HOA records from neighborhoods across 3 states, all showing the same pattern of harassment, property devaluation, and forced sales. By noon, they'd arrested 12 HOA board members, 5 Apex executives including Mercer, 3 judges, 6 police officers, and, to gasps from the press, District Attorney Walsh herself. I brought Mom home that evening. Neighbors lined the street, applauding as we drove past, many holding signs, "Welcome home," and "We believe you." "I didn't know we had so many friends," Mom whispered, tears in her eyes. "They were afraid to speak up before," I explained. "Mercer had everyone terrified." Sarah Jung appeared at our door with a casserole and news. The FBI found records of over 60 families who'd been forced out of homes across the state. Class action lawsuits were already being filed. Officer Rodriguez, one of the few honest cops, stopped by later. Henderson's singing like a bird to reduce her sentence. Claims the landmines were Mercer's idea, a tactic he'd used before. 2 weeks later, we attended the emergency neighborhood meeting. The remaining residents voted to dissolve the corrupt HOA and create a simple neighborhood council instead. With term limits and financial transparency, my mom would like to head the gardening committee, I announced as Mom blushed beside me. The vote was unanimous. As spring arrived, Mom's health improved. The stress had been worse than her actual condition. Her roses bloomed again, spreading slightly beyond our property line. But now neighbors asked for cuttings instead of complaints. When the federal trial began, we watched from home, Mercer and Henderson faced charges of racketeering, attempted murder, fraud, and money laundering. You know what still puzzles me? Mom said, watering her flowers. Why did they want our land so badly? The answer came 3 days later when Agent Donovan called. Geological surveys, she said excitedly. Your property sits on an aquifer. Apex wasn't planning a shopping center. They were going to bottle and sell the water. Worth millions. Mom laughed until tears came. All this over water? I would have let them drill a well if they'd asked nicely. That evening, as fireflies lit up our garden, neighboring families gathered for an impromptu cookout. Children played where landmines had once been buried. Adults shared stories of HOA harassment, finally free to speak openly. To new beginnings, Sarah Jang toasted. Raising her lemonade, I watched Mom smile, surrounded by genuine community at last, and thought, sometimes you have to risk everything to protect what truly matters. If this story of justice served cold gave you that satisfying feeling we all crave, smash that like button. And if you believe in supporting creators who expose the truth about power-hungry HOAs, there's a thanks button below that helps keep these stories coming. I'm your host at HOA Tragedies, and I'll see you in the next episode. Citatuan Sanfu, where we dive into another case of someone getting exactly what they deserved. Until then, remember, some neighbors don't just want your land, they'll bury bombs to get it. HOA Tragedies proves it. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next unbelievable episode. Sean Tauder,